Okay, we're back. Discussion questions for Matthew chapter 5, which is the Sermon on the Mount, or the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount. Okay, so first of all, just as we reflect on the radical and countercultural nature of Jesus's teachings, right? That's what's so cool. Look at this, and even though we hear kindness and we hear the Lord, obviously, right? It seems very spiritual, but realizing it's countercultural, and that makes it radical. Like, to me, that makes it the most boss, the most like power moves, because they're so opposite of what we would normally do. Um, and just for all of us that grew up being like, I'm angsty and like, stick it to the man, like whatever. And it's like, okay, well, the Lord is countercultural, but how it helps us have deeper and more authentic discipleship. And so I think about, because how do we spread the word of Jesus? And we start to be able to look at people and be like, you don't even get it. We're about to go against the world. Like, that's the whole point. Like, it's us against the world. And it's less of this whole like stoic or pious attitude of, oh, you've got to come over here and be this like goody goody, whatever. And it's like, no, this is some game changing stuff. Like, this is that we're going to face the world, that it is raw and authentic, and it is strong, and it is genius, and it is just everything that the world doesn't have. And those that don't know that yet, it's like you haven't lived in the world long enough to realize that the world doesn't have much depth to it. I was listening to a song this morning and it said something like that. And it was like, I can't swim in the shallow anymore. Like, I was made for the deep. And so just knowing that something in you is calling to the deep, and there's so much more. But we want authentic, we want raw, we want real. That's why the Bible's so cool too, when we read it and it calls us out, and it's like someone checking us and calling us out because we know it's true. And it's like, ouch. But that was actually perfect, because I'm so sick of flattery, and I'm sick of people telling me what I want to hear, and the whole like, when people don't actually give you feedback, and so you can't grow or get any better, versus when you see how Jesus is, you think, I want to be like that, you know. And that's the whole trick, is the world's trying to keep us out of the word, because it knows if you're in this, you're going to want to be like him. And so it's like, let's make him look like something he's not. Let's make him appear as undesirable as we can, and just keep people away from it, because they know that when you're in this, you're going to realize how desirable it is to have that kind of character and to live like that. And it makes so much sense. And it's every answer to every question we've ever had. And it's everything we've ever thought was wrong with people and wrong with ourselves. We see it called out, and we see how to be different, and how it's upside down or opposite of everything we would have thought. How just the way we thought to handle conflict, the actual answer is inside out, basically, or how we thought to, what love and relationships look like. And it just gives us a standard we never would have set for ourselves. And it gives us an answer that shows that we think so in a box, and we think so like small. And then this is why it's called the light and the darkness, because like all we know is like these same typical answers that we see other people do, or that come natural to us in our reactions. And all of a sudden, when someone brings another option to the table, and you're like, I didn't know that was an option, but now that I know that that's an option, I'm picking, like, that one is definitely the better choice. That one is the boss move. Like, that one is the, like, gosh, I wish I knew other metaphors. I'm thinking of like if I was playing a card game and it's like I don't even know, the slam dunk. That was the slam dunk. There we go. Okay, so, that we're not going to do that noise. So, Beatitudes, right? So it's, what's the significance of the blessings that Jesus pronounces? So if we remember, they're all kind of not seeming like blessings. But how do these characteristics differ from worldly values? So I would say, when you're reading them, what would the world consider to be blessed, or to be the things that make you happy, versus what this is? And why do you think that these people are considered happy, right? How does it challenge our understanding of what it actually means to be happy? Because in this world where everyone's pursuing happiness and no one can seem to find it, and maybe we need to try something else, But again, how is this opposite from the world? And what can we learn when we read this of what it actually means to be happy? And I think about why. I would even go further. Why are these people happy? I kind of tapped into it, but it's like, why? And, my point of view of it is that they have more room. There's more opportunity for God to show up. The more empty we are, the more poured out, the more humble we are. I've said this before too. When you're on the floor, you got room to be lifted up. But when you're at the ceiling, you can only get pushed down, right? You can only fall. And so something about the more we empty ourselves out, if we just keep being empty, 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 pour ourselves out, less of us, more of him, we get more of him. But the more of us we try to hold on to and we try to stay in self, there's not room for him, right? We haven't created room for him. And so there's songs about this too, right? I will make room for you. But even think about a house, and if you just have furniture crammed up into every corner, there's no room to add anything versus there being space. Not only just that space is good and necessary, but it allows you to add things to the equation. And so, anyway, just giving the Lord room to move. Uh, okay. What does it mean when he says that we're the salt of the earth? And what does it mean when he says that we're the light of the earth, right? And so, with the salt of the earth, I would say, why is it important that Christians preserve values, right? In a world that is absolutely set on demolishing every value, every standard, every foundation that the history of mankind has been built on. Why is it important for us to preserve the foundation and preserve the standards and preserve the values? To hold on to honesty, to hold on to generosity, to hold on to, right? What are these things that Christ is telling us to do? Hold on to um, humility and forgiveness, right? Some of these things. Because I would say without us, it wouldn't be evident. There would never be forgiveness again. There would never be generosity again, right? Everyone would start looking out for themselves. But, um, right, why is it important for us to preserve the values? And then what does it mean uh, to display our light in the world? And how could you practically do that? So, how could you practically shine your light before others? And again, what does that even mean? I kind of gave you an example of what it meant for me in my life. Um, but how could you practically shine your light before others and remembering that it's for them, not you, right? So that they see, if that's what it said, shine your light so that they see and glorify God. So, how can you be a light in people's lives that if they are in a dark, dungeness cavern, you are shining light, you are bringing truth, you are bringing awareness to another way to them and giving them hope. So, how can you do that? Um, let's see. I talked about Jesus coming to fulfill the law. Oh, I think that this is cool. I might just talk about it. I'm not sure if there's a question in here. Um, I guess it says, like, Jesus said he came to fulfill the law. How does this affect our understanding of the Old Testament and its relevance today? And obviously, when he says, like, the law still applies, like, the whole point is that the law is perfect and love fulfills the law, right? I fulfill the law. The new covenant is love, but love will easily, without having to think or try or like focus on pretense or behavior, will fulfill those things. Um, but I think about how it shows too God's righteousness in justice, that people always think, well, why did God not just snap his fingers and just erase everything? Like erase all the bad, erase all the evil. But it's like he establishes covenants. He speaks his word and it is fixed and everything operates within it. And so him even being just, that it's like he operates within whatever he has created as justice. And so what he shows us is that his law was good and is perfect. He has no problem performing or fulfilling the perfection of it. Um, but that he didn't abolish his own law, right? He didn't, and that's such a mankind thing to say. Like, why didn't he just make a rule and then just decide, I don't want that rule anymore? It's like, no, he found a way to make it all happen, for him to come, for him to die, and him to resurrect, and him to make a way, and him to, overcome the enemy, like all the stuff, for him to come get us, for love to exemplify itself. He did it all under the law, like, and kept his covenant, right? Like that's the whole point, is it's like it's justice perfectly, because it's like he didn't just erase his own words. He actually kept his own words. Um but so, and I talked about this too, but it says in verse 20, when it says that our righteousness must exceed the Pharisees. Um, and so, what, and remember, righteousness meaning back to your original design, or being as you ought to be, being in right standing with God. And we know we're in right standing with God through Christ, because Christ is like, he was never far off. Like he was never distant from you. You've distanced from him. You can always come home. You're invited, right? Come back. This is the revelation. But the Pharisees had no idea of their original design. And this is most religious people. It's the same thing as, it's like, I have to do a bunch of things to get close to God. And it's like, that is the opposite of love. That is the opposite of what Jesus said. That is not being aware of how things ought to be and how things were originally made and how we are to be fruitful and multiply and be in union with him, right? So our righteousness needs to surpass the religious people. It surpasses the Pharisees. It surpasses the task list of things to do to climb the ladder to get to God. And it comes into an identity thing of, I know who I am. I know that I'm his. And how do we do that in practice? And so what I love is, again, it's not about trying to do certain things. It's like, when you believe something, you behave that way. When you truly believe and know something, it comes out in your words, it comes out in your actions. So I would just say, like, how can, or even just pray to the Lord, like that he continues to reveal the truth of his purpose and his love for you. Um, but I guess the question here could be, how does all of this give you a better understanding and a deeper understanding of the law, of the code, right? The code that the Lord created, as far as like the system of how we operate, and what our design is and what is good for us, and how being in union with him and being filled with love is the proper operating system for us to bear fruit and for there to be um, righteousness. Okay. So then he talks about murder, he talks about lust, which shows us a deeper intent of the commandments. That's what I love is, right? Everybody in the law is taking it at the surface value. And he's saying there is a deeper intent that you guys missed. Like, you don't read between the lines. There's a deeper intent that you missed. And so what does this teach us about God's concern for our inner lives, right? Our soul, our inner man, our beliefs, our desires, and our will, our decisions. That's our soul before they ever turn into behaviors. So, what needs to get right in our root system? What does it teach us about his concern for our heart, and not just our pretense, not just our actions? And what are some practical ways? I kind of gave some, but you can think about them when you think about the areas in your life that you struggle with. What are some practical ways to gouge out or cut off things that lead you to temptation or lead you to rebellion? So, how can you build parameters in your life or boundaries so that when those things start to come in, you have a, like, trigger, right? I would say that it's like, maybe if I started to do certain things on my cell phone, my trigger would be, I got to put the phone down and I got to go on a walk. Like, that's going to be my trigger. Is like, whatever it is, when I start getting lost into something, um, or maybe if it's anger. And the moment that I feel that I'm angry with someone, I say, I'm going to listen to a worship song. Like, that's going to be my response, right? So, some things that you could do. Um, and then when he's talking about our relationship with others, right? We're called to seek reconciliation. First of all, the Lord reconciled us back to himself. So that's cool. The gospel of reconciliation. Like, he talks about becoming reunited. And so how he tells us to reconcile with others. And so, right, that's showing the heart of the gospel, the heart of the good news is reconciliation. When he was talking about, before you even offer a gift to the Lord, before you focus so much on, like, Lord, I'm going to read with you and I'm going to pray with you and I'm going to be me and you, me and you. He's like, how can you make sure that you've reconciled with every single person that you have a problem with in your life? Make peace, right? Be a peacemaker. Make peace before you come make sacrifices to me. So just, I would say, think, is there anyone in your life? And it's going to be the first person that pops into your head. But is there anyone in your life that you need to reconcile with? And understanding reconciliation is going to feel like you being the bigger person. Um, but just do it. Why not? Why not have peace? Um, let's see. Ooh, I think about how can your yes be yes and your no be no. Maybe just make a pledge and say, like, that's what you're going to start doing. Is you're going to stop swearing, you're going to stop over promising, you're going to stop all that stuff, and you're just going to be good at your yes being yes and your no being no. You're going to stick to your word when you say something. Um, and then it says, how does this teaching about honesty challenge the way we speak and interact with others? Because again, it's like when you're honest, you are honest. And so you don't have to try to look honest or convince anyone that you're honest. You are. You know that when you say yes, you're going to do it. And you know that when you say no. And it also is going to help you with your relationship with yourself. Do you mean what you say? Because if you don't trust yourself, you're not going to trust other people. And so just even starting to build that, and then you're not going to trust the Lord like you don't trust anybody. So talk about trust issues. It's like, well, we don't trust the Lord that he means what he says because we don't mean what we say. And then we don't believe that anybody else means what they say because we don't believe what we say. So we need to get to where we speak truth. Um, and we're honest in any and all situations. Um, let's see. This I've talked about a lot, but just talking about how we respond to injustice, personal injustices. This is a big one because I feel like a lot of us want revenge, and it doesn't feel good to be wronged. It's injustice. And we can ask in the moment, well, why would the Lord allow an injustice? But we have to let it play out. And I love that this is where he says, I'm your defender. We have to let him defend. If we come to our own defense, we've just stepped out of the fortress, like out into the open, and now we're trying to defend ourselves. And I've watched it happen many times in my life. It doesn't work. As soon as I try to defend myself, I am now involved and I am now at their level. And the other parties can't tell who was actually wrong, right? So the way to remain blameless is to just not involve yourself and let this person attack you, because then it becomes very clear who the attacker is. So it might feel in the moment like, oh, you're losing, you're being attacked, but it becomes evident to all who the attacker is, and you trust that the wrong will be righted. Or again, at least maybe if it's not even in that exact instance, that it will work out in your life. Like justice will be brought to you, vengeance will be brought, right? The Lord says, I will avenge you, right? Vengeance is mine. He will handle that person however he needs to, and just that we let the Lord defend us. But anyway, how can you in that moment bite your tongue, swallow your pride, say a prayer, hold your breath, count to three, whatever it is, hold your breath, but count to three, and handle an injustice versus letting it um, get to you, right? The idea is hopefully to become unoffendable. Like if someone is trying to offend you, just be unoffendable and be like, especially if you know that they're lying. If they're lying, then why are you even giving it any credit? The lie will prove itself false. This is why every truth will be revealed. Everything will be brought into the light. If someone is lying, then it will get caught, because lies just get worse and worse and worse. And if they're telling the truth, then you shouldn't have done it, and maybe the justice being served is something that needs to happen and you'll learn your lesson. But um okay, let's see what else. Obviously Jesus' radical teaching about loving our enemies, which it's so funny. Why is that even radical? That is what the whole fake world is trying to tell us that it's about, is like world peace, but no one wants to love their enemies. Everyone just wants to love the people that they love. And so it's like, this is why Jesus is everything. He is love. He is the answer, because he's the one that says, love your enemies. That should be the gospel, like summed up. That should be faith in Christianity and following Jesus summed up, is like, look at people. And if they aren't loving their enemies, then they don't get it yet. Right. Because the whole idea is loving those that seem against you, because they're not against you, right? We don't battle against flesh and blood. They're against themselves, honestly, because to be a bit against God is to be against yourself. Like you're sabotaging, you're running. To be against us is to say, like, they don't like the conviction and the awareness of their conscience that it brings. And so again, they're continuing to try to run and hide. And so you sympathize, and that's why you pray for these people. And so maybe make a list of who can you pray for that right now in your heart, that's the last thing you want to do, is like, or up until now, your thought has been, get far away from that person, and add them to your prayer list. So I'm gonna say that, make a prayer list, not just of all the people you want to pray for, but the people that you need to pray for, or the people that just need prayer. That'd be a better way to say it. But it also change your heart towards them. That's what's cool, is like you'll stop having this like naggy, like bitter feeling towards them. And when you pray for them, you change and you start to realize, wow, if I could transform, they can transform. And like there was a point when I treated people the way that they're treating me. And so it's like just you kind of you can look back and see yourself when you were there and how you made it through. And then again, you want that for that person. Um, so let's see. Oof. How can we apply the perfection that I read and talked about to our daily lives? But remember, the word perfect was talking about becoming full grown, becoming mature, going through all the necessary stages to complete the process and get to the end goal, get to what you're aiming at. And what we're aiming at is the Lord, right? This is the opposite of sin. Sin is missing the mark, it's being aimless, it's rebellion, it's fruitless, but it's literally to miss the mark and to be aimless. And so to be aimed is to succeed. It's to be with God, moving with God, and becoming mature, becoming full grown, completing every stage of the process to get to the end, to get to the aim. How can you live your life like that and realize that every day you are growing and maturing and you are perfecting, right? You are becoming the fullest capacity of yourself and of His strength in you. Um, and so I would even just like hold on to that. I just pray that that gets written on your heart, that every day you realize you are growing. But what does, can daily life look like that looks like you maturing? Um, let's see. So in general, right, it's like Matthew 5, it challenges us in our relationships with others and the attitude of our hearts. That is really the best way to summarize this, is it's all about the attitude of your heart. So just constantly check in with yourself. What is the attitude of your heart at any given moment? And then when you let yourself be filled up with the Lord, the attitude of your heart can go back into peace and go back into love and go back into all the good fruit of the Spirit. So we're not going to find any of those responses without Him. Um, I like this. Which teaching of this chapter do you find the most difficult to apply? So go back and watch the video if you didn't watch the chapter, or just read it by yourself. Um, which one? I would be interested to know. I would love to know. I need to chew on that one as well. Which one of these is the most difficult to apply? Because that's why it's cool that we read together and walk together, because some of these things are easy for some people and we all have different ones that we struggle with. Is why we encourage each other. But I would love to know which one's the most difficult for you and why. Okay, I love you guys. Have a great day. I will see you tomorrow for chapter 6, and God bless you. Bye.